All right. Yeah, we're getting at it on a Monday because this one wasn't going to wait till Wednesday. Attorney Franz Borghardt in studio. What's happening, man?
I bet you thought when I became a national legal commentator weekly, Fridays with Franz on Court TV, I bet you thought that would be the end of this. But now I'm coming back for doubles in seconds, baby.
Hey, I'm very appreciative of the time.
It's for you and the people and Alondra. So, super excited to be here on a Monday. I don't normally get twice in 1 week with you guys. So I'm excited. I got up early just for you.
The story's warranted, for sure.
Sure.
It was 2020. This is from WAFB, by the way. Scotty Hunter over at AFB. It was 2020 when Baton Rouge police officer Troy Lawrence Jr. admittedly muted his body camera at the scene of a fender bender. His alleged aggressive handling of a witness at that scene cost the city parish $55,000 in a settlement. Could have just cost us $40,000, but we refuse to apologize. So, covered that with Councilwoman Lori White Adams last week. I mean, just buffoonery across the board. Well, first of all, I don't know if we should have been paying this settlement versus actually fighting it out. It's another discussion for another day that's probably not even worth having because that ship has already sailed. We settle at the drop of a hat. No, as an attorney, you would appreciate the settlement. It's less work for attorneys. But fighting it out is a different story that we're not even going to walk down for this one because that's not the way it played out.
Would you make an apology that you didn't really mean for $15,000? I would make an apology for $15,000 cash.
Here's the thing, though. If that apology now is going to cost me more for future settlements, no, I would not.
Okay.
A settlement is not necessarily an admission of guilt. Was the apology going to be an admission of guilt?
What about an aloof apology? You're familiar with an aloof apology? I'm sorry this happened. I'm sorry that this got this far.
Yeah, I'm sorry you feel that way.
I'm sorry you feel this way.
Right.
You know, a little bit of emotional terrorism.
I mean, we could have saved $15,000.
A little gaslighting.
Off of that. Yeah. So here's the thing, though. Let's get back to the reason why that $55K was on the table. This was an officer who admittedly muted his body camera. Before that, getting back to the WAFB version of the story, Lawrence Jr. was accused of crossing the line with the people he is sworn to protect and serve when he cursed at a young man at the scene of a traffic stop on New Year's Day. Lawrence's body camera was not muted during that encounter, where he said, "Hey, if you don't shut the bleep up, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to bleep you up." Lawrence is heard telling the man in the vehicle. The man was on the phone with his mother while he continued to berate him, saying, "You think I'm playing with you? I will bleep you up." Actions taken by Lawrence and other actions taken by his fellow officers cost taxpayers $35,000. So here we have a BRPD officer who is the son of a deputy chief and, as the headline says, has a history of complaints. From an attorney's standpoint, from a legal standpoint, what is Baton Rouge on the hook for here by keeping him? Do things get exponentially worse the longer he's there?
Well, optics-wise, it doesn't get better.
Sure.
But remember, with the BRPD, they're civil servants. So it's not as easy as,
right,
I'm going to fire you. Now they can move him to a desk job to where he's not dealing with the public. They can give him a job to where he's not dealing with the public. But the problem is when we start using phrases like history of issues, history of complaints. Now, history of complaints, that doesn't necessarily get me, I'm going to use the word cautiously, aroused. What does that mean? You can have lots of complaints, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing something wrong. Right. Validated complaints, IA complaints that are validated, maybe. Maybe this guy doesn't need to be dealing with the public anymore. How about that? That's my nice way of saying it.
Okay. How do we get to that point? Or more to the point, if that were the case, why are we not at that point already?
Well, that's a question for Chief Murphy Paul and his administration.
Mm-hmm.
You, myself, Alondra, we don't decide what tasks, what jobs these officers do.
Right.
And you would hope that someone is being vigilant about this. I mean, these men and women are some of the most essential part of our societal structure. You would hope that somebody's safeguarding this, watch guarding this. That's what you would hope.
Yeah.
So maybe put him at the counter at a district, let him answer the phone.
Okay, now for Baton Rouge Police's perspective here, there are a couple quotes of Baton Rouge Police Chief Murphy Paul. Reading straight from the story, it says Police Chief Murphy Paul signs off on recommendations. This is on disciplinary recommendations. Signs off on recommendations and approves the discipline for his officers. In Lawrence Jr.'s case, Paul says corrective actions have been taken to put an end to repeat policy violations. That includes placing Lawrence Jr. in BRPD's internal behavioral management program, known as EIS, or Early Intervention System. He points to Lawrence as an example that officers are not able to get away with violating the department's policies unscathed, and that Lawrence does not receive favor because of his father's position. By the way, his father, who is a deputy chief, is part of the group that makes discipline recommendations to begin with.
So the proof's in the pudding, right? If he never has another issue again, well, then this worked.
Okay, but if he has another issue in the future,
it didn't work.
Well, at that point, isn't it already too late? But to get to the quote from Chief Paul, he said, because I think if you look at the incidents, they were investigated. There was no incident that was not investigated. The appropriate disciplinary action was taken if there was a violation of policies, just like with any other officer. So are we looking at the most recent incident being the, I guess, straw that broke the camel's back as far as pushing towards disciplinary action, whereas it makes previous incidents that, would you even call them incidents until you get to this one? Does that make sense? No, but do you see where I'm going with this? It's like,
I'm good at rationalizing.
Okay.
And I'm just saying, okay, you've disciplined him, and the proof is in the pudding. If we don't have it now,
right? If
there's no more incidents, then your system worked. If there's another incident, well, I suppose your system didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of public trust, look, I don't think that every infraction, every complaint deserves a firing or a termination or severe punishment. That's not the world I live in. You know that.
Right.
I mean, I do believe human beings are capable of change.
Mm-hmm.
The proof is in the pudding. I'll say that a third time. I hope it's good pudding.
No, what I'm having trouble coming back around to here is the idea that, can we find that proof before there's somebody else, before there's another incident? Is it possible to know that up until?
Well, I mean, what's your time frame? 20 years?
It's another good question.
30 years? Is there a time frame where we look at anybody who's accused of doing something, who did something, that we're like, okay, you're good.
So
go back.
The only way to know that this works is if this guy, if this Troy Lawrence Jr. bats 1,000 for the rest of his career.
Well, I don't think it's batting 1,000. I think it's not violating Baton Rouge police policies.
That's what I mean.
Complaints are going to happen regardless.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I would prefer don't stick a penny in an electrical socket again. How about that?
Is the penny the complaint or
no,
the penny?
The procedural violation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
problem is complaints are going to start coming.
Oh, with this guy?
Yeah.
There's blood in the water.
And that's where we're going to pick it up. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to check your money now. Going to check traffic. Coming back, he's Attorney Franz Borchardt. It's a bonus, legally served. It's 647 to Talk 107.3.
I noticed you noticed my gaslighting comment. I'm going to fit that into every single week. Somehow, some way, I'm going to use the word gaslighting.
I mean, if you're an attorney and somebody's actually for real guilty, and you're trying to convince the jury that they're not, that's a little bit of gaslighting.
No, it's a failure to prove the legal burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
It's a little.
Unless I go to the level of saying that they're innocent, because there's a distinction between not guilty and innocent.
Fair.
What is this?
Right there, that was gaslighting.
Yeah. And mansplaining.
No.
I was mansplaining a little bit too.
I was getting some major mansplaining on Friday.
Hey, just because you're not innocent doesn't mean you're guilty.
I know. And it's I'm just not even going to argue it. See, whenever I get it's easy to gaslight me because I'm just going to be like, yeah, you're right. You got it. I am. No, because
I love being an emotional hostage.
I'm really good at it. It's what am I?
I had a buddy of mine, Alondra.
It's going to be, if I ever do a Tinder, that's going to be on my Tinder. It's very easy to gaslight me, guys.
So I had a buddy that's had several failed relationships, and I say that cautiously because I've had several failed relationships. And he looked at me the other day and said, "You know, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the problem." And I just looked at him and I was like, "Feel like we're hitting some new major great breakthrough here."
Yeah. Thanks, Taylor Swift.
I know. Why would you say that?
How long do you think I could have a relationship with Taylor Swift? A month? 2 months? That's like riding a mechanical bull. How long can you stay on the mechanical bull? So are we going to go into the next one, or are you going to stick with this one?
I'll stick with this one. Go back to the apology part of it.
Okay, sure, bro. It's your show. Bayou Gal on Twitter has a GIF where it's GTFO. The problem is you can't just fire. It's a good problem for the Baton Rouge police officers because there's this civil service process where you can't just say you fired and that's it. Like a sheriff's officer behaves badly, you can't just trump them.
It's gonna be like a little late till you're ready now.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's actually the kind of the traffic's fault.
We're gonna skip the other story.
I knew you were.
No, I'm gonna tell you why. I just found it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not new.
It's an older story.
Yeah. How about July of 2021?
That was her new story?
No, hers was 2 days ago or last week.
Well, I think it's because he's now officially on the force. And he's like in training.
Hang on.
It's all good.
No, wait. Baton Rouge police who was arrested and fired in 2017.
Galen, I'm going to suggest that to Brian about releasing juvenile records. Maybe we can talk about that on Wednesday. We're not going to have time today, but I like that conversation. I like the conversation about whether or not juvenile criminal records should be sealed or not. In fact, I would, dare I say, have strong feelings about it.
What do you think? What is your?
I don't think those records should be released. What you do as a juvenile shouldn't be released.
I think we should redefine what a juvenile is.
I think if it's a violent crime,
if we're talking about juvenile, the rap performer,
we're not.
I mean, if we're talking about anyone under a certain age, now what would you define it as?
Hey, there's got to be a sliding scale based off of the crime.
Well, there is. There is a sliding scale. You can charge certain juveniles as adults.
Charge them.
Yeah, as an adult.
Once they've crossed that threshold, though,
I feel like,
do we know everything that's happened before that?
It's where are you releasing the records to? The public? No, I don't think you should release them to the public. By the way, can I mansplain to a man? Or is that called something else? Bro-spaining? Was I mansplaining to you on Friday? I cherished my laundry time on Friday.
Club News Dump. This would be a good song for it. 652 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. Mornings with Brian Haldane rolling right along. Attorney Franz Borgard in for a bonus legally served. So we're talking about Troy Lawrence Jr. and we are going to get to the other story, by the way. We're talking about Troy Lawrence Jr. and his actions costing the city parish $55,000. Now, that number could have been lower. And we talked about this with Councilwoman Lori White Adams last week, but I want to bring it up with Franz as well. And we grazed past it earlier. The city parish has paid $55,000 to settle a police brutality lawsuit, but could have paid less if the officer had been willing to apologize to the woman he cursed at, yanked from a car, and handcuffed. The officer, Troy Lawrence Jr., has been involved in 2 other cases, which the city parish paid damages, and has been repeatedly suspended in other incidents, plaintiff's attorney Thomas Frampton said Wednesday. Lawrence, who has worked for BRPD for 4 years, is the son of Deputy Chief Troy Lawrence Sr. Frampton said Sherman E. Reed, who filed the current suit, offered to accept $40,000 with an apology from either the officer or the police chief. First of all,
I like this plaintiff, by the way.
do you?
I like the guy that's willing to take $10,000 less for
15
for an
pay
apology.
less.
You know what that means to me?
What?
He's building some credibility with me
Why is that?
because it's not about the money for him as much as it's about $15,000, which to him would have been probably about $10,000 after attorney's fees.
Sure.
That's a lot of money. It's a lot of claims.
No, man.
Okay, so if it was on Vice at counsel, I don't get mad at the chief or the officer. If their attorney said you're not apologizing, because it is standard in most civil settlements that you don't admit liability or
Correct.
wrongdoing. That's standard.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. So you're cool with 15 grand out of the taxpayer's pocket because of that.
I didn't say that. I'm saying I understand it. I'm saying I understand. Just because I understand something doesn't mean I agree with it.
Okay.
If it's Chief Murphy Paul or this officer saying, if the attorney goes up to them and says, hey, Alondra, you really should do this apology to save the city some money. And you're like, I'm not admitting I did anything wrong. Screw this guy.
Right.
Because neither the chief nor this officer are reaching into their wallets to pay the money. You and I are.
Right.
Alondra is.
Here's the thing, though. Once you make that apology, that's now a matter of record for every other case.
Okay.
That's now a matter of record for.
Well, this is kind of a record for everybody anyway, isn't it?
Well, but this is one that's we've already heard this record, though. This is one that police settlements are. That's not new. This isn't the first time we're seeing that.
I want to know, and I don't know if Councilwoman White answered this. I want to know whose decision it was not to apologize.
Parish attorney. If I'm not mistaken.
So if it's the parish,
I think I'm remembering that right. We've had a whole weekend since.
Right. If it was the parish attorney's decision that we're not going to apologize to protect and shield the rest of the floodgate of other civil rights suits that are coming,
Mhm.
I would look at you in the city of Baton Rouge and say, good lawyering.
Okay.
And because it goes towards what you're suggesting, which is a settlement is not necessarily, we settle things all the time.
We do ridiculously.
Well, I mean, the cost of litigating may have exceeded. We would have spent at least this much taking this to trial. Now, we're not Walmart. We don't have the bandwidth that Walmart has. And by the way, when I say that, I mean Walmart doesn't settle anything. Walmart's like, come at me, bro.
Oh.
And they will set money on fire.
They seem to be doing okay.
Walmart is doing okay. We, on the other hand.
Well, but at a certain point, does it not put a stop to it when you dig in and fight it? Does it not?
If you win.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, if you win.
I mean, if this parish attorney's office wins. I mean, this parish attorney's office does things sometimes like states law on the record that isn't necessarily law.
Okay.
You and I have talked about this.
That's a whole other problem.
Now, they do outsource litigation. So I'm just saying, you want to take a stand, you got to win. If you're like, come at me, bro, you got to win.
I'm sorry. They outsource litigation.
Occasionally, yeah. They'll hire outside people.
Yeah.
But that's nothing to be, I mean, that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
No, because one way or another, we're just going to pay.
Mm-hmm.
One way or another, it's coming out of your pocket and mine.
The lawyers win.
Yeah. And that
Brian doesn't win.
No, I know. But isn't that unbelievably frustrating to
And this guy's still in the force.
Yeah.
With some corrective measures.
You realize there's like 8 different discussions based off of this one.
That's why we're talking about
topic. I know. We got to squeeze this one in as well before we get out of here. We only got like 2 minutes left. BRPD rehires an officer that was fired 23 years ago for sexual harassment and truthfulness. Grabbing this one from Unfiltered with Karen. Baton Rouge Police Department rehired an officer who was fired over 20 years ago, bringing the question of potential disparate discipline to the forefront. The now 56-year-old was fired in 2000 from BRPD for conduct unbecoming an officer, sexual harassment, and lack of truthfulness following 2 separate assault allegations. Franz, just on its surface, this started with a traffic stop assault back in 2000, July of 2000. You've read this story, right?
Yes.
Okay.
How is he not
What
being
would-
criminally prosecuted and registering as a sex offender?
Okay, that was going to be my first question.
How about that?
The second question was going to be, how does a 56-year-old get eligible for rehire?
Why are you hiring him?
Yeah.
Like, unless you have a special purpose or task for him, but I don't think that that's what's happening.
All right. To be fair, I want to clarify that this one's coming from one news outlet and one news outlet only.
Right.
The other story we talked about has come from every news outlet in town. This one I'm not seeing anywhere else. So I'm not 100% sure.
Your disclaimer's noted.
Okay. Now, that being said, this officer had an allegation in July of 2000, another one in August of 2000, and then there was discipline after that.
The allegation was sexually assaultive in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he meant it, whether it was hyperbolic, that would be a felony of some sort, sexual assault.
Okay. Now, that being said, 23 years on the shelf. Since he was not prosecuted after that, is 23 years on the shelf a decent enough suspension?
That's why I posed the question in the first segment of how long is too long, or how long is long enough? 20
Right.
years. What's he been doing for the last 20 years? What's he been doing for the last 23 years?
That's a good question. That's
If I
not
knew
part
the
of
answer,
story.
if that to me is the most critical part of the story.
It really is. Also, completely different administration.
Right.
So, all right. He's Attorney Franz Borgart. We're going to be back at it on Wednesday for our normal segment of Legally Served. Appreciate you, man.
All right.
7 o'clock at Talk 107.3 FM.